foreign predatory parasitic corporations are replacing our natural environment with an industrial landscape of wind turbines. One Nation will stand against sending children down a path of drug dependency and body mutilation to appease the gender cult. Leave our kids alone. The Trusted Digital Identity Bill is a global surveillance and control mechanism that profit-hungry corporations and power-mad politicians drafted and crafted. One Nation opposes this inhuman dystopian future that the United Nations promotes as the Great Reset, and we condemn this Parliament for signing on to it. I called for Australia to reject the World Economic Forum's Great Reset and instead mount a great resist. Just like the koalas being euthanized to make way for wind turbines, or damaged solar panels leaking toxic heavy metals into waterways, the United Nations net zero plan again involves killing the environment to save it. I've been speaking about the fear, the oppression and the inhuman cruelty of our COVID response since July 2020. I promised to hound down those responsible, and I will continue relentlessly to keep that promise. You're about to be live with me, Senator Malcolm Roberts. Welcome to the weekly wrap from the only real opposition party, the only true opposition party, the only party actively listening to and serving the people of Queensland and Australia. I want to start by thanking, first of all, people who send me cards of thanks and support for my stand for the nation. I've got one here from Susanna and Howard and Susanna. Howard and Susanna up north. So thank you so much. Thank you for all the many cards that we get, for messages of support and thanks. Right, we've got a combination of stories today. Some I've written notes on, some I've written actual script on. Sometimes some of my staff have put in comments, so it's going to be all over the place. We haven't quite got our camera work set up yet. We've got comments that we can't see your comments, but we've got someone in the room reading your comments, because this today is going to be a session for me to listen a lot. We're going to actively invite comments from you during the session. First of all, some really good news. The branches are starting up, One Nation branches right around Australia. They're based on the federal electorate, so they're meaningful and they're good size so people can move around and still get to a branch meeting. I went to one last week, just popped in, the electorate of Ryan, which is my home electorate, and here in Queensland, and it was wonderful to see the energy. And you know, one of the challenges of being in One Nation party is we've got so many free thinkers, so many independent thinkers, so many people who just speak up there and speak their mind. That's exactly what we want. That's exactly what we want. That's the basis of democracy, active participation in democracy. And so it can be like herding cats at times with the One Nation group or a forum, but that's wonderful, because One Nation people are certainly welcome to call us out, and they do call us out. And they hold us accountable. That's my job, so I appreciate that. And it was wonderful at Ryan to see people contesting policy ideas and putting forward ideas on the agenda for future meetings and how to conduct the branch. And by the way, the party has got a very solid set of bylaws for conducting branches. It's really well set up, professionally set up. I want to acknowledge the work of everyone at headquarters and my own office and other officers, Senate officers, for contributing to that. And especially want to mention Lee Hansen. That woman is remarkable. She's very, very competent and understands organisations, understands skills needed to lead and put together organisations and hold them together and give people meaningful tasks and feedback. So thank you so much, Lee, for setting up the branch structure and making it legal. And now we're embarked on that process. So what we want is meaningful, practical branches, not just branches in name only. For example, I was told that in the Liberal Party, for example, I won't mention it, but where it was, but a major branch, one of the top branches in the whole country, if you keep scroll back, mate, that's it. One of the top branches in the whole country, one of the most powerful branches in the whole country. They make suggestions for the state executive and the state meeting, state annual conference, and then the state makes policies for the federal. But the MPs come straight out and tell them, we don't have to take any notice of this. But what we want is real fair income branches that have an effect on candidate selection and participate in candidate selection, nomination, and also policies, really serious policies. I got that they were based on federal electorates. I love the energy. It was just an informal meeting, just a start-up meeting. It wasn't an official branch meeting, just a precursor to start-up meeting. And I just thought I'd rock in unannounced, and it was wonderful to see everyone hard at it. So I really loved it, the ideas, and some people are forceful, other people are adamant, but they hold us accountable. I'll be in Adelaide at the end of this month at a branch formation meeting there, and tomorrow I'll be in the Right electorate at a meeting in Beaudesert, so looking forward to that. Right, let's get on to the topic where I want to get some feedback. Australia's future. For 4 years, I've led the way on housing catastrophe, the housing catastrophe that's a real disaster in this country. We've got people in every major provincial town in Queensland homeless. Not just one or two, but many people homeless. From Cairns in the north to Coolangatta in the south. And the solution is cutting mass migration. There are many solutions. One Nation policy is the only party with a policy that covers all 4 areas of meeting people's housing needs. But I'd like diving deeper. I've got a wonderful team behind me here in my Senate office, the electorate office and the parliamentary office. They really think, they engage, they argue, and they put forward ideas freely. And they're not bashful, which is great. But I just thought I'd sow some seeds and ask questions about what is the main focus of people's needs in Australia right now. We've got a diverse range of ages in our office, and they go from young people in their early 20s to right through to people in their 70s, and people in between. And we're split, the young ones and the older people above 40 and the people below 35. And so it's very interesting to notice that dichotomy, that split. So we have people from almost every generation, and what they want, when I ask them what they want for their future, there's no clear theme. There are 2 basic themes. One was the young people are saying, we want a future. We want a future. You older people have had a future. You knew when you were young that there was a future in this country. Well, we can't see that. And they're concerned with cost of living. They're concerned with standard of living. They're concerned with housing in particular, and mass immigration, cutting mass immigration, just stopping mass immigration, deporting some people. So that was a very clear theme. They understand that the mass migration into this country is causing a housing catastrophe. The older generation, who saw the roots of our country, the history, the heritage, they understand that that's what gave us what we had as children and young adults, and what set us up. And we're very concerned at losing that, because we see that as the heart of the country. So then that division in the office of what people want is right across the country. It's split based on age, and that seems very, very important to me. It seems significant, and I've picked it up before, but what I want to do is tap into that today at this live stream. So Australians seem lost. I'm just going to read some notes here. Australians seem lost. The generations are separated across many grounds: culture, economics, and aspiration. People don't know what they want. Actually, they do know what they want, but they don't know how to get it. Whereas when I was younger, we knew what was required. If we worked hard, we got it. It was that simple. It's not so today. So I want to listen directly to young people on this live stream, and afterwards. I want to get your comments, but also communicate with our office. And when I'm out and about in the community, let me know. But I also want to hear from older Australians as well, because older Australians have grandchildren, and they also want the best for their young children who are forming young families. So young Australians probably, well, you wouldn't remember the nostalgic Australia that people over 40 want to see restored. So I'm asking everyone, especially younger Australians, what do you want for Australia? What are your dreams? If you could change government policy, what would you do? What would you do? What are your biggest needs? Because we need you to help us rebuild Australia. So drop a comment in the comment below this live stream. And it seems to me that young people want to see the current reality, and they can see the current reality honestly and starkly. Cost of living is a nightmare for many people. Many, all Australians, in fact, I'd say, except for the extremely wealthy. Standard of living is not as high as it was. Energy prices are completely unaffordable, and they're artificially unaffordable because of government policy. Taxes are out of sight. And what's worse is most people are starting to become aware that multinationals pay little to no company tax in this country. And that's been the case since 1953. That's not me saying that. That's a former Deputy Commissioner of Taxation for large companies and for international matters. He said it to me, told me personally. I met with him after he retired. The bureaucracy's gone out of control. Government departments are not responsible. So that's the broad cost of living things. And taxes making life unaffordable. And making it impossible to have a family with one person staying at home. It's just about impossible now. Then the next issue for young people, correct me if I'm wrong, put it in the comments. Housing. Only one nation has a policy that includes affecting the demand, reducing the demand on housing, increasing the supply of housing, reducing the cost of construction, the cost of housing, and improving the access to finance. Only one nation has that. We don't have any glitzy schemes to grab headlines, schemes that are just going to make you debt slaves. We want the reverse. We want to make you independent. So that's why we've got these policies. As I said, the third one was immigration. And I've talked about the immigration from three aspects. And I'm going to introduce a fourth one today because I want to get your comments on that as well. It's always been about numbers. And by the way, I've led the way in the country in the last 4 years. It's now well and truly a topic. During the election campaign, it was starting to surface, but it was just a matter of Liberals and Labor just making people aware they had a policy, but they don't really have a policy. They just said they did. But what we've got now is a full-blown raging catastrophe, and people well and truly aware of it. We saw people in the streets just a few weeks ago. So I've always talked about numbers. We've got mass immigration in this country, and it started with John Howard's Liberal National Party government in 1996. They doubled immigration during their term in office, doubled it. They didn't tell anyone. They stopped people on the boats, and everyone gave them credit for that, and rightly they should. And that idea they got from Pauline Hanson. But they didn't talk about the hundreds of thousands of people that they flew in by airliner and dumped in our country. And since then, it's risen dramatically. We've got now over 500,000 people coming into the country every year under Labor. But numbers, that's the crisis that's driving housing infrastructure shortages. Then the second aspect is quality. They're bringing in any riffraff now. And remember, I'm not criticising migrants because I am a migrant. My mother was Australian, my father was a migrant. So it's not immigrants that we are criticising. It's the government who lets in people who shouldn't be here. So we've got the quality. We're supposed to be, according to Anthony Albanese, bringing in tradespeople, bringing in tradesmen to build houses. Well, 0.6% of people coming in are tradespeople with construction experience. So 0.6% are going to build houses for 99.4%. It's bloody ridiculous. It's dishonest. The third aspect I've talked about is culture, because that's the most important thing in any organisation, whether it be a country, a club, a corporation, a church, any group of people. The culture is the most important thing that determines profit, productivity, wealth generation, and security and safety. And we have a policy that was introduced by Labor's Bob Hawke as the Prime Minister of multiculturalism. Sorry, we don't have a policy. We're opposed to multiculturalism, but Australia has a policy of multiculturalism, which is destroying this country's number one culture, which is the Australian culture. That multiculturalism has been fostered by John Howard after following Bob Hawke, and every Prime Minister since has preached multiculturalism. Well, multiculturalism means that you don't have to get on board with our culture. You don't have to become Australian. So we're starting to lose our roots, our heritage, our history. We're starting to lose our connection with the country. We're starting to lose our identity. And that's what I believe many people were in the streets about just a few weeks ago, marching in their hundreds of thousands across the main capital cities and in some regional towns as well. I know Cairns had one, Noosa had one. So that's extremely important, that what makes us Australians. When I go overseas, people say, "Who are you? What do you do?" My name is Malcolm Roberts, and I'm from Australia. My name is Malcolm Roberts, I'm Australian. So my family, Roberts, and my nation, my nationality, Australian. That's what everyone does, that's what everyone expects, because we're tied to those two forms of identity. We also know that people want safety. They want their wife, daughter to be able to walk down the street safely at any time. They want children to be safe. They want to be able to return to an Australia where we left our doors unlocked. They want a basic education, not indoctrination. They want truth and reality. They want to stop the woke agenda. And they want to get rid of bloody government control, the bureaucracy, stifling, the inefficiency. Okay, Ryan, if you can move up. So one of our young staff today said, the Liberal Labor Uni Party have stolen your future, stolen our future, stolen our children's future. So what I'd like to know, just pop them in the comments below, and Ryan's going to read them out to me. We haven't got the camera and the screen set up yet to take your comments because we've changed it to make it a better format. Is housing most important to you? Is immigration most important to you? Mass migration most important to you? Is our heritage or roots most important to you? Sense of belonging most important to you? Sense of identity with the nation state? A sense of community? What things do you want? What do you want for your children or grandchildren? As a young adult, what do you want? As a middle-aged adult, what do you want for your children? What do you want for your family? As a grandparent, what do you want for your grandchildren? And I've got to say that I was born in India. I had my formative years in India, from birth to 6. They're the most critical years for the formation of both character and intellect. That's widely known. That's the formative years when our personal patterns of response are formed, how we respond to various things in our life. So that was in India. Then I've studied in the United States. I've worked in the United States. I've worked and lived in 8 states. I've visited all 50 states. My wife is a dual citizen, American and Australian. Both our children are dual citizens, American and Australian. But I'm not an American. I was born in India, but I'm not an Indian. I'm Australian. I'm not British. My father was British. I'm not British. I am very proud of my British ancestry. So I'm not Indian, not American, not British. I am Australian. That's really important. Very, very important to me. That's the only thing I identify with. I'm Australian. I'm sure that applies to many people. Now, if we go back to 1901 and the birth of our country, birth of Australia, Australia had the highest per capita income in the world. We were the leading in the world. We had the highest standard of living of any nation in the world. What gave us that? What gave us that? Our heritage, our roots, our history. What's given that along the way? What's missing now if you're an older Australian or a middle-aged Australian? What's missing if you're over 40? What's missing now from that? Because that's what gave us our birthplace, our birthrights, rather. So let us know, just pop them in there. Can you see any coming up, Ryan? Yell them out, mate.
From Presdo. I'm 15 in Melbourne, and my parents can't pay rent, school fees, and other bills. I had to start working at IGA to help my parents with bills, even just a bit. How can you and One Nation help us?
Get more One Nation people into Parliament. Have a look at our housing policy, our immigration policy. We want to deport 100,000 people immediately. And we want to remigrate people back to where they originally came from or where their last place was before they came to Australia. There's just some of the things. Have a look at our housing policy. Presto. What's next?
From Pix Purple, that government wouldn't control education departments and housing dream was available.
So people are concerned about their children's education, to stop government control and make housing and make housing possible.
From Soy Grappler, stop migration for 5 years.
Stop migration for 5 years. That's exactly what we're saying. We're saying we're actually going into net negative migration, net negative. So what that means is that I think every year about 220,000 people leave, roughly. About 100, we would limit the entries back into the country at 130, which gives us net negative. So population would decrease by 90,000. So 220,000 leave, 130 we would let in. That's net negative 90,000. So the population would actually fall. And we've got other sites in mind as well. We've cut student immigration dramatically. What else, Ryan?
From Sean Mac. Everything you say, Malcolm. I want Australia back. Live the way of life here or leave. Stop false immigration. And I'm born Scotland. Been here since 9 years old. This is the only country I know.
I'd like to know how old he is, how long he's been here. That's good. Okay, what's next?
From Aid Larson. We need a sense of community. A sense of pride, place and purpose.
And thank you so much. Aid Larson. And by the way, if you can put your age bracket in there, whether you're below 40 or over 40, that would give us a bit of a hint as to how the split works with regard to age.
Just trying to find some more.
Coming in pretty thick, are they?
From Jonesy, we need to pressure the government into repealing the digital ID bill.
Yep, so you'd like to make sure you've got a life that's free, just like we used to have. Okay, well, while they keep coming in, let's continue with the next topic. You saw the Manchester synagogue killings of 2 people in Britain today, early last night. So I'm going to read out a summary from Pauline on her Facebook page. I'll just read it. Overnight, 2 people were killed in an Islamic terrorist attack in the UK. Despite being born in the United Kingdom, he was radicalised by an ideology that is swamping Western nations due to weak, misguided governments. Pauline is spot on. This man was not Syrian. He was British born. It's not Britain that's the problem. It's not Syria that's the problem. It's Islam that's the problem. Let's make sure that's very, very clear. Islam is the problem. She went on. 90% of the 43,000 extremists being monitored by the UK's security service, MI5, were Islamic terrorists. 90% of the 43,000 extremists being monitored. What's the cost to Britons of that monitoring? What's the cost of failed policies? I pointed out that the cost of government is tax. The cost of excessive waste in government is excessive tax, and we're in excessive tax in this country, and so are the British. The cost of failed policies are not even measured. Not even measured. Look at our net zero policies, for example. Look at the costs imposed by that policy. In France, Pauline goes on, it's estimated that the country has around 50,000 radicalised individuals with ties to extremist mosques. Again, what's the cost to the French? What's the cost of failed policies? These people should not have been let into the place in the first place. And she goes on, authorities here in Australia will not publish figures that relate to radicalised individuals with ties to extremist religions, nor does the Australian government provide an annual cost of counter-terrorism. The cost is enormous. Why the hell are we letting in people who say they want to kill infidels, they want to kill Christians, they want to kill people who are not Islamic? Why let them in when they've sworn to kill us and kill all non-Islam? What are we doing? The governments in this country have lost sight of what they really need to serve. The immigration policy is about who we bring into this country. But the number one person to consider in the immigration policy is the Australian already here. All the Australians already here. Our safety, our security, our productivity, our prosperity, our ability to generate wealth. These are what's important. We want to bring people in just like we did in the 40s, 50s, 60s, people who contribute immediately. You know, the Italians and the Yugoslavs and the Greeks, they were the source of jokes because just like anyone in a playground who's different, but they're well and truly assimilated. They came into our country, assimilated, and went to work, hard to work. Many Asians have come into this country, hard workers, and go immediately to work. I was talking with a Sri Lankan the other day. His skin's not the same colour as mine, but he's Australian because he has contributed to the country. He came here because of our heritage, our history, the British ancestry that we've got here, because that's what's given us our government systems, our legal systems, our whole way of life in this country. And if you question, I'm going on with Pauline now. If you question the government's decision on migration, mass migration, and who they let in here, you're labelled Islamophobic. Well, we're not at all afraid to say the problem is not Syria, the problem is not Britain and that these 2 people died, the problem is Islam. So Pauline finishes with, wake up Australia, I've been warning of these problems for decades. 3 decades almost in Pauline's case. Perhaps it's starting to sink in amongst many Australians, but we have a lot of work ahead of us to wake the rest up. We certainly do, Pauline. Pauline was accused and smeared when she said we're in danger of being swamped by Asians in 1996. That was the danger then, and we're in danger of being swamped by the Chinese in particular, because the Chinese come in there with foreign agents from China embedded in them. We know that because Chinese have come here. They're wonderful hard workers, most of them, and they settle in and they work hard. And they left China to get away from communist rule, and they're being tracked here in Australia by Chinese forces here in this country. Why are they here? Now we've got being in danger, Pauline called it out, danger of being swamped by Islam in 2016. Now we can see the consequences. So let's move on. So we're under threat from foreign agents here in our country. But we've got another threat that's built by people within this country, but it's part of a global threat. The same policies on misinformation and disinformation are being implemented in Britain, most of the Western European nations, not the formerly communist ones who were under control because they are aware of control mechanisms being set up. They also have the United States, Canada, New Zealand, Britain, and Australia, the five former Commonwealth countries. These policies are in all of these being put into place in all of these countries, with the exception now that Trump's in place of the United States. But they're global policies. These are coming from the United Nations. We've seen the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, pushing these policies. What are these Suite of Five policies? The Suite of Five, in each of those five countries and in many of the Western countries, both sides of politics are pushing the same agenda. The Liberal Party under Scott Morrison introduced many of these bills to the Parliament, or introduced the concepts or started working on these concepts. Misinformation and Disinformation Bill, Digital Identity Bill, Identity Verification Bill, Under 16 Age Ban, which means that if you want to be on the internet and you're above 16, you still need to log in. You will need a digital ID. And then there's the digital currency, the central bank digital currency, which under my questioning in Senate estimates, the Reserve Bank admitted that they're working on in this country. And they admitted that it's being connected to a global currency. So we know these are facts. And that suite of five bills and five initiatives was introduced or started work on by the Liberal Party, but then actually introduced actively for voting in the Labor Party. Now, the Misinformation and Disinformation Bill is just a censorship bill. It basically gives the government the right to tell social media, and in some cases the media, as happened during COVID. This happened during COVID, and also citizens directly, that they're misinforming or disinforming. What's misinformation? Misinformation is something that's not factual, something that's wrong, but it's not intentionally wrong. Disinformation is something that's intentionally wrong, intentionally misleading, whether by omission or by statement. One Nation, and I'm very pleased to say that Paul and I initiated the response to this when Morrison introduced the concept to the Parliament, just introduced the concept, not the bill. And then when Albanese introduced the bill, we started the opposition to it well before he did that. We worked very proactively. We set up conferences around in Australia, brought in leading media people and politicians from around the country to speak at that. We got the conference was sold out here in Brisbane, sold out. And when the Labor Party introduced the bill, they then had so much pressure from the people. So it wasn't One Nation that stopped it. One Nation initiated and led the way, but it was the number of people that got involved. That's what stopped Labor Party. Labor Party had so much heat put on them that they sidelined the bill. And then now they're working on bringing it back, because we've got a Misinformation and Disinformation Senate inquiry. It's actually called something else. It's called the Senate Select Committee on Information Integrity on Climate Change and Energy. See what they've said? There's no misinformation or disinformation, but it's specifically in the terms of reference to talk about to consider misinformation and disinformation. What's going on here is that the Greens introduced this motion for the inquiry. The Labor Party joined them and supported it, and between them they have a majority in the Senate. So it just got through. So this is about, I believe, bringing back the Misinformation and Disinformation Bill and justifying it based upon this committee. And the committee was in operation hearing witnesses last Monday and Tuesday. I was watching them. I couldn't attend. I was unable to attend. I'll go into that later, but I will be attending the next one, which is somewhere around mid-November. But I watched every single word that was stated in that session. We know that there are wonderful submissions from people like the Page Group, Page Research Centre, right here. We know that there are submissions to the Senate from the Rainforest Reserves in Australia, a marvellous group, from scientists like Dr. Keston Green. Sorry, he's an economist, but he understands statistics. So we've got marvellous... these are just three of many, many, many. We've got last count I saw, about 175 submissions. Many, 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 I haven't gone through them yet, are those from people who are opposed to this misinformation and disinformation bill. So every single witness, apart from two, who are both government agencies and started off the day, every single witness was in favour of the misinformation and disinformation bill. Not one witness selected out of the many fine submissions from organisations that are opposed to this nonsense. Not one. Not one. And I want to compliment Senator Matt Canavan too. He was the only one. Well, no, there's also Senator McLaughlin from the Liberal Party. But Matt, I'll get on to more Matt in a minute because I've got these down in structured note form. Instead of investigating revelations about dark money, most of it foreign, and flowing into nonsense net zero and into unaffordable solar and wind industries responsible for handing over hundreds of billions of public funds, grants and special projects. Not one person investigated the dark money that's mostly foreign that's coming into propping up solar and wind. Not one. Yet everyone knows about it. The inquiry has obsessed about misinformation and disinformation. The whole thing is more concerned with protecting the feelings of scientists and researchers than finding the truth. I actually don't call people scientists on the global warming side, the climate change side, because they have shown, not one of them has shown any evidence, not one of them has shown proper scientific process. That's why I call them academics. They're not researchers and scientists, they're academics and activists, in my opinion. They're not interested in finding the truth. We've seen this before. We've seen it ever since 1980 with Maurice Strong pushing. He's the father of global warming and climate fraud, and he was pushing this until he died in 2015. But that's what we've seen him. We've seen him set up the UN's climate organisation, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, all pushing a political agenda. We've seen it in the COVID response, in big tobacco, protecting big tobacco. The scientific establishment, the moral authorities, the political hierarchy take charge and they rule the roost. They're all trying to stifle and control scientific exploration out of fear they will be made to look like idiots, lose their power or lose their funding. This is all about control and wealth transfer. That's what this is about. And they have a fear that the whole house of cards will fall. Next one, please, Ryan. So let's ask a fundamental question. How does anyone assess misinformation and disinformation? How do you assess misinformation and disinformation? I'll get to the way I think is best. But here's a quote directly from the committee. Quote, "One working definition for misinformation is any arguments or information that conflicts with the best available evidence and experts." Really? Who determines the best evidence? Who determines the best expert? So not on Monday and Tuesday, we had, apart from the two government agencies, we had, I think, about 14 witnesses. And they had a decent session. Most of them were an hour or certainly three-quarters of an hour, which is quite long for a Senate inquiry, each one. No one found any dark money for fossil fuels. In fact, what was so stark was that not one shred of evidence came across about the science. Not one shred of evidence came across about scientific proof. Not one shred of evidence came across about hard facts backing up their claims about what the skeptic side are doing. Not one. Not one. It was all based on belief, feelings, and hearsay. So, despite the fact that they're all opposed to fossil fuels, not one of them found any dark money for fossil fuels. They said things were happening, but they didn't find any evidence. They didn't provide any evidence. So what happens is that the committee showed that it doesn't want to go looking at real dark money in solar and wind. They just don't want to do that. And there's plenty. We know that from the Page Group, we know that there's $150 million going into of dark money going into solar and wind, propping up solar and wind. The committee obsessed over people criticising climate change and all associated technologies, taking personal offence and demanding protection. Personal offence at being held accountable. That's not science. The best way to determine who's telling the truth is for honest, open debate and based on evidence, hard physical evidence, rational thinking. So what they're worried about is they're worried about opposition to the thesis of apocalyptic climate change, any view that solar and wind are flawed. In other words, content and speech that jeopardizes solar and wind and hydrogen projects and research grants. Their research grants are at stake here because it's all based on bullshit. Their experts frame dissent from the expert consensus as some sort of conspiracy, yet when asked to prove it, they couldn't. They just took it on notice. That's the whole thing. They make claims, and that's why I've said in my submission, which I'll get into in a little while, in my submission, that that the biggest source of misinformation and disinformation on climate and energy is the United Nations and the federal government, both Labor and Liberal. All these policies, as I'll show in a minute, are based on no evidence whatsoever. Matt Canavan pulled up, and he did a good job, by the way. Matt did a very good job in the committee. He was pretty much on his own, had one colleague. Matt Canavan pulled up an example of the ABC engaging in what the experts described as misinformation, and the committee could not back up their own argument when given a real-world example. Matt asked them for it. They couldn't even back it up. They ended up heckling the senator with points of order, but trying to offer actual examples in the left-wing press after hours of attacking conservative media as being a source of misinformation, with no evidence. So Matt said, "Where's your evidence?" And they couldn't do it. They couldn't provide it. So then they started criticising Matt. We had the disgraceful performance of the deputy chair, a Labor senator, and the chair colluding to shut down Matt. Disgraceful. Any criticism of scientists or suggestions that money or politics might influence science was as an attack on someone pushing their climate and energy narratives. So if you dare question their claims to evidence, or any claim at all, then you're accused of being peddling misinformation or disinformation. That's the definition of misinformation and disinformation. They concoct they fabricate the consensus, which is not scientific. Consensus is not scientific. It's a political tool. Scientists, as Einstein said, a wonderful, beautiful theory with 100 supporters can be smashed by one piece of evidence. One piece of hard scientific data can smash 100 scientists, can smash 1 million scientists. That's what these people do. They claim a consensus, which is a political tool, not a scientific tool. Consensus means it's not scientific. The idea that scientists, academia or politicians have any right to censor the public forum of citizens and other scientists in Australia or around the world is outrageous. They have no right to do so. None whatsoever. The best way to handle misinformation and disinformation is to have open, free debate. Scientists never fear debate. A good scientist told me once, debate is refreshing. So even if a scientist puts forward a view, puts forward a hypothesis, puts forward a conclusion, recommendations, and says, there it is, he will first of all send it to his biggest detractors and say, tear it apart. Because he knows that if they can tear it apart, then he'll stop going down that track. So science has been lifted up. If they can't tear it apart, then it prevails until we get more advanced tools somewhere down the road, and then they tear it apart. So a true scientist loves debate, loves scrutiny, loves being challenged for his or her results, and they don't hide the data. The first duty of a scientist, once they put forward a paper, is to share their data, share their methodology, share their process, and let scientists pick that apart. Is the process wrong? Is the data wrong? Is the data got a fault in it? Is the data inadequate? That's what a good scientist does. But what we've got in the climate and energy game is academics hiding from the scrutiny of their peer scientists. Won't even release data. How can you have a peer review process when the data's not even provided? You can't. And that's what the peer review works on. So it's peer reviewed, but it's not peer reviewed. The only people who desire censorship are people who know they are wrong. The only people who desire censorship are the people who know they're wrong. I'll go through bits of my submission. You can see these all on the inquiry. It's a submission to the Select Committee on Information Integrity and Climate Change and Energy. If you just Google Senate Inquiry, Information Integrity, Climate, Energy, you'll get it. And then go to on the right-hand side of the page, it's a parliamentary website, you'll find submissions. Then just click on submissions, just do a search, Command F, and you just put in Roberts and you'll get to it. It's number 125. It's about 71 pages plus about another 30, 40 pages of appendices. I've got the details in the appendices. So there's a table of contents laid down there so that you can jump into any aspect of the submission. What I want to draw to your attention is that I've started with the fact that John Howard's government introduced the major climate and energy bills. It wasn't the Labor Party, it was John Howard's government, Liberal National Party government. And what you'll find is that he introduced these bills, including, and he also included the stealing of farmers' property rights to comply with the United Nations Kyoto Protocol. The Liberal National Party government stole farmers' property rights to comply with the United Nations Kyoto Protocol. That was part of their claims for sequestering carbon dioxide. Now, what they did was John Howard was thrown out of office in 2007. 6 years later in London, he said that on the topic of climate science, he was agnostic. He didn't have the science. And yet, while his government was in power, they said they had the science and that it was all based on science. So that's why it wasn't based on scientists. What I've also shown is a list of 10 people who I asked for evidence, and they said they've never been given any evidence. That's members of Parliament, never been given any evidence of climate change, no data, no evidence whatsoever. I wrote another 19 letters to 19 senators and members of Parliament and asked them, because they had been claiming that we need to cut carbon dioxide, I asked them for their evidence, and not one of them could give it to me. 4 replied. Not one of them provided evidence. Not one. It's all a lie. I've got a section here on 2 pages. By the way, I've quoted these members of Parliament out of the Hansard, making outrageous claims, not being able to back it up. Senator Jenny McAllister was the government assistant minister on climate change and energy. She's a senator. That's how she got into Parliament, she told me, based upon being an advisor on energy policy and climate policy. She can't even provide evidence. She gave me a list of 25 references, which she got from Thomson Reuters as being, wait for it, the most popular articles in their time. I asked for evidence on cause and effect. What evidence they have that human carbon dioxide is causing climate change. She gave me impacts of climate change. No evidence for the cause of it. We've got Prime Minister Morrison, national MPs, letters to MPs prior to 2016. So no evidence, yet lots of policies, lots of laws, lots of provisions, lots of regulations saying we need to cut human carbon dioxide. You'll be paying for this. You are paying for it already. Electricity prices have trebled since John Howard first introduced these bills. That's due to solar and wind largely. So it's all based on lies, all based on misinformation and disinformation, every bit of it. There's not one stitch of evidence from any of these. Check for yourself. So then I explained why there's no evidence from these politicians, because they can't get it from the CSIRO. CSIRO has never provided any scientific proof nor scientific basis for policy. Never. You can't have a policy without a scientific basis for it. You can't track progress. You can't do a business case. You can't do cost-benefit assessment analysis. You can't do a project plan. You can't properly plan resources. They want to destroy. They don't want to just build a power station or build a few wind turbines. They want to replace the whole electricity grid. Our most valuable piece of infrastructure, bar none. It's a core to our Western civilization, our developed civilization, our industrial civilization. And they're destroying it. with not a single plan, no basis whatsoever. They can't even track progress. We're walking off a cliff with the blindfold on, and it's going to cost us $1.5 to $1.9 trillion. They have no idea of the cost it's causing. Many of the costs they've left off the books. Many of the costs they've hidden by saying they're consumer provided. Solar panels on roofs, that's not costed. Linking them up, not costed. Batteries in homes, not costed, because they're assuming you're going to pay for them. If you don't, you won't have any electricity. It's that simple. Bureau of Meteorology has never provided evidence. Australia's chief scientists, I've held these people accountable personally, and they haven't provided any evidence. United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the UNIPCC, never provided any evidence. The founder of the United Nations Environmental Program and the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, Maurice Strong, was a crook. He died in exile. Or actually came back to Canada from China, where he was in exile. But he was one of the co-founder directors of the Chicago Climate Exchange, which was trading carbon dioxide credits. So the man was setting out to make trillions of dollars. These are not things of just fiction books, novelists. These are real, and he's not the first lunatic to try and control the planet. We've got other agencies there. I've listed them that I've checked, that I've had exchanges with. They've never provided any evidence. And now we've got Trump coming along and the Department of Energy releasing a scientific report from real scientists, hard data, saying that they question the climate and energy policies. Then I've gone on to the second section on energy, which is at page 46, and the GenCost report, which is all about fraud. It details what I've detailed is, in the context of misinformation and disinformation, the GenCost report. They won't even provide the basic assumptions. They won't provide the basic assumptions, yet we know the assumptions are flawed. The GenCost is not transparent. Your energy policies, your climate policies, your farming policies are based on bullshit. Then there's appendices. I'll show you this as well. This is separate. I didn't submit this. There's a document that I published in 2011 called The Truth About Carbon Dioxide. Some facts on carbon dioxide. It can't do what they're claiming it to do. So what have we got next? So this misinformation and disinformation bill is about censorship. That's all it's about, just censorship. And it's part of that control suite of 5 bills. Misinformation and disinformation, digital identity, identity verification, under 16 age ban, which will require anyone to watch the internet watch the internet unrestricted, to have a digital ID. And then we've got the central bank digital currencies. So that's all I've got for today. So I'll open it up to Q&A, and Ryan's going to read out any questions you've got.
From Martin Larson, 60 and small business owner. This government needs to learn how to budget like businesses. No to mass immigrants, only skilled visa on better training in Australia. Work for social welfare and drug and alcohol tests before payments.
Wow. Thank you, Martin. That's wonderful. What I can say is that one of the things I've been doing, and I'm now being called positively about, is I've been requesting data for all the decisions based upon that are the basis of legislation and policies. You won't be surprised to realise that every major problem in this country comes out of Parliament House, Canberra. Every major problem. Or some of them come out of the states, but very, very few. But they're worsened by Canberra. The fundamental problem we have here is shoddy governance. It is terrible governance. Excuse me. Terrible governance. And it's not based on data. Now, you as a small businessman, if for those who are in the corporate world, large business, you know that you make a business plan based on data. The government doesn't do that. It makes decisions based upon getting headlines, emotions, feelings, getting votes, not on data. That's the fundamental problem in this country. The second fundamental problem in this country is the way they throw away our sovereignty. They cede our sovereignty to United Nations, to the World Economic Forum. Both those agencies and many other globalist organisations, have no authority over our country, none at all. But the Parliament, through Labor and Liberal Uniparty, has been giving them the authority through passing bills that enable them to put in place UN and WEF policies.
From Samuel Ibbotson, making burning the Australian flag an arrestable offence. Nobody should be allowed to burn our flag in our country.
Hear, hear. That's exactly right. And that's Pauline tried to introduce that bill and a motion, and it was negated by the Labor Party and the Greens. So that's where, the Greens are just astounding. They would rather talk about someone else's country. They would rather talk about improving that country. They would rather talk about the flag of that country. They'd rather wear that country's flag in the Parliament. But they don't want to wear the Australian flag. They don't want to talk about our country. Everything our country does, according to the Greens, is negative. Everything other countries do is positive. If they like the other countries so much, why don't they just move back to there?
From King Cardona, 2.9 million ADA. Net zero is only making the big corporate companies rich and making everyday Australians poor. That's
exactly what's going on. Net zero is a scam. It's to provide money, wealth. Everything you can see in government is about, and especially global government, is about wealth transfer and control over people, to force them to do things, and transfer wealth from the people to the multinationals and also to parasitic billionaires. COVID was all about wealth transfer, control, and they tried to bring in many other controls. The suite of 5 bills that I talked about a little while ago, that's all about control. Net zero is all about control of farmers' property rights, control of electricity, control of energy, restrict your use of energy, force you to buy electric vehicles that are unaffordable and that are very, very big users of resources. A lot of their claims are based upon lies. Instead, electric vehicles will put more pressure onto our grid, which will drive up the cost of electricity even more, and put more pressure on our resources, because EVs fundamentally require more energy than a conventional car to build, which makes their price high. You require more resources, especially rare earths, which will drive up the price of cars. That's why EVs can never compete with petrol and diesel, and that's why the Labor Party and the Liberal Party are pushing regulations to control the access of to petrol and diesel. They want to artificially raise the prices of those to make them more expensive than EVs, so people are forced to buy them.
From Judy Manning, government choosing who peer reviews something isn't a real peer review.
Correct. Well, in many cases, government doesn't choose who peer reviews. It's the universities, but the universities depend upon government money. So what we've got right now is guns for hire when it comes to scientists. That's why they're not scientists anymore. They're academics. They're just on the grant industry, the grant merry-go-round. They just do whatever they can to get government grants. If they can't get a grant, then they just talk about the climate aspects of that particular research. For example, if they can't get a grant for research into the horny-toed frog, then they put in an application to get a grant for the climate effects on horny-toed frogs, and then they get it. So this has been going on for years. We know that. Decent scientists have told us that for decades now. And what's happening is that it's the retired scientists, the retired professors who are doing that because they can speak up. They haven't got to worry about tenure anymore. The young ones just kowtow, put their heads down, many of them, with the exception of Peter Ridd and a few others, that most of them just follow the line because it's all about grant money from the government. Government controls science, therefore it's not science anymore. It's not objective.
From Brutality, China's car brands are going bankrupt faster than their electric cars catch fire. Australia had the best manufacturing until the government sold out to China.
Correct, and you're absolutely right, Bruce. The Lima Declaration, the United Nations Lima Declaration, signed in Lima, Peru in 1975 by the Labor Party government under Gough Whitlam, was ratified in 1976, the following year, by the Fraser Liberal National Party government. It was ratified after the Labor Party signed it. And that was all about sending our manufacturing skills, manufacturing talents overseas to so-called developing countries, and China was one of them. We funded, we enabled, we advised, supported the development of China. and we shut down industry in this country. And now think about what we're doing. We were the largest exporters of coal. We're now the second largest exporters of coal, because Indonesia to our north, with dirty coal, with coal that's not as energy efficient as ours, that's being sold to China because it's there's no restrictions on it. That's being sold to Japanese countries, Japanese power utilities, Koreans, etc. Because even though it's inferior coal, it's easier to get at because many factors that Indonesia is just opening up its country, and we're trying to stop coal in this country. Well, I'm not, but Liberal and Labor Party are trying to stop coal-fired power stations. So what happens though is we're still number 2 exporter in the world. We produce about 500 million tonnes of coal a year. Chinese produce 4.7 billion tonnes of coal a year. So it's about 9 times as much as what we produce. And they're heading for 5 billion tonnes a year. And they're still taking some of our coal because they're the largest burners of coal. So we are sending out coal for the Chinese to burn and turn into wind turbines and solar panels. They ship them back here. We subsidise their manufacture in China. We subsidise the transport, subsidise the installation. We destroy our environment, destroy our farmland, erecting these things, paying the Chinese a subsidy and other multinationals a subsidy to run these things. All of those subsidies drive up the cost of our electricity, which makes our electricity more expensive than China. Well, let's have a look at the cost of electricity in this country. If you take coal out of a coal mine and put it into a coal-fired power station, it's at the mouth of the mine. No transport costs, none at all. So we sell that coal-fired power in this country for 26 to 33 cents a kilowatt hour. 26 to 33 cents. In China, they take our coal, move it overland, port, ship it, handle it at another port, put it over the rail for another 400 kilometres or so, put it in a power station, and they sell it for 12 cents a kilowatt hour, converted with currency exchanges in place. 12 cents a kilowatt hour, less than half, almost less than a third of what we do in China, in Australia. So we subsidise their solar and wind products. They use mostly coal, nuclear and hydro. They're using some token solar and wind, but they rely upon cheap sources of power, which is coal, nuclear and hydro. We are driving ourselves out of business because the number one cost in manufacturing is no longer labour, it's electricity. So that's the number one cost. So when we drive up our cost of electricity, we send our manufacturing to China. So China gets our manufacturing, gets our jobs, gets our employment, they get our coal, and they get our money. And they get control of our electricity structures in this country, infrastructure. And this is insane. And then we've got the polluting solar panels and wind turbines in this country. We're destroying our environment. Solar and wind make no sense economically, industrially. You can't run an alumina smelter on that. No sense socially, no sense environmentally. It's just every which way you look at it, it's a disaster. And yet we're converting hand over fist with no plan from Labor or Liberal Party, no plan whatsoever, and they both want to do it. They both want to stop burning coal-fired power stations.
From Kieran O'Rourke, there is no middle class anymore. There's only the rich and the poor. This is only being accelerated.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, Kieran. There was no middle class back in the days of feudalism, none at all. And then we had the scientific revolution come along, which then made objectivity the criteria for making decisions, rather than power of physical brute force, power of religion, power of the other control apparatus in society back in feudalism. With the scientific revolution came the industrial revolution, and that created the middle class, and the globalists lost control. Now they want to put us back in control, and they want digital feudalism to come in. I've been talking about this for years. It is so clear, it is so obvious what's going on. That's why the suite of 5 digital bills about controlling our communication, controlling our access to the internet, controlling our access to information, controlling what we say. That's just part of it to control us. It's all about control and wealth transfer. I keep saying that. So you're absolutely right. It's about destroying the middle class. I'd argue with you that we don't have any middle class. It is definitely on the way out, They're definitely trying to kill the middle class and put in place basically what they want is factory fodder from the lower income, and they want to support the elitists at the top of the income. So the poor will be working for the rich and make the rich richer. That's all that's going on. It's going back to feudalism, but this time it'll be digital feudalism and electronic feudalism. But we can stop that. All we have to do is hold these bastards accountable.
From Lancelot Link, why not let Australians decide what information is credible or not?
Exactly, Lancelot. You always make sense when you come on this program. That's exactly what needs to happen. The best antidote to lies, disinformation, misinformation is debate, free and open debate, truthful debate. And the best assessor is the truth of the people. Let's have one more question and then we'll...
From CC, hi Malcolm, glad I made it. Is it possible for Australia to roll back contracts of multinational corporations taking our resources for nothing?
It is, but not with the current government under the Uni Party, the Liberal Labor Uni Party. They have both presided over that. John Howard presided over the cheap sale of gas to Japan and China. Bob Hawke, in 1983, when he came to power, presided over the Petroleum Rent Resources Tax, which let off the biggest tax evader in the world, Chevron, selling our gas to Japan for basically nothing. We get hardly anything from it, and yet the Japanese levy $3 billion a year in import duty on Australian gas, so they get more money out of it by far than we do. And then the multinational will say to our government, "Oh, but we'll pack up and leave." Well, leave, because in Norway you don't get away with it. In Qatar you don't get away with it. Qatar produces about and sells about the same, exports about the same amount of gas as Australia, roughly, and they make about $30 billion out of it, so a year, and we make peanuts. This is all bullshit they're feeding us. Australia has become, the people of Australia have become poor, the poor men and women eating the crumbs off a rich man's table, and we've given them the bloody table. The best way to sort this lot out is to change the government and get more One Nation MPs into Parliament. That's the only way you'll sort it out. Pauline Hanson has always called out Labor and Liberal, and I do the same. There's no future with Labor or Liberal. We've got to get rid of the bastards. Anyway, I just saw something there from Peter Manuel, a flag. I could barely read it. He always makes sense. You're coming in. Don't worry about it. I'll check up later. Anyway, that's the weekly wrap-up from the only opposition party, the only real opposition party, the sensible party, the only party really that's listening and serving the Australian people. Hope you have a great weekend and your team wins in the grand final on Sunday night. I know what Ryan will be backing. He'll be backing the Broncos. So will I. I'd like the Dolphins, but the Dolphins are not in the final, so I'll go with the Broncos. That's all we have for this week, so see you next week. By the way, Senate estimates coming up, so we'll be having some fun in Senate estimates. Have a good weekend.